Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So welcome to First Tuesday. I'm Miles Shaver. I'm the Associate Dean of Faculty and Research at the Carlson School, and it's exciting to see such a large, warm group of people on a cold Minnesota February day, so welcome. Before I introduce Corie Barry, on behalf of the Carlson School, I want to thank our First Tuesday partners, our premier sponsor, Tennant Company, and our media sponsor, Minnesota Public Radio. And of course, a very special thank you to the many Carlson School of Management and University of Minnesota alumni here today. As a faculty member, I can say we always love to see you on campus. You're always welcome, and we're so happy that you're here. In particular, though, I'd like to welcome members of the Carlson School Board of Advisors, Bennett Morgan, Charlie Montreal of Best Buy, and Mike Zeckmeister. We're also thrilled to have 2 tables of Best Buy scholars with us. With the Best Buy Foundation, we are very proud of the Best Buy Scholars Program at Carlson, a program that was established in 2019 and a special part of our Centennial Scholars Initiative. So thank you again to all of our other benefactors that are here. Thank you for everyone. Again, welcome to all. It's great to be here on a cool Minnesota February day. So, okay, let me tell you a little bit about Corie Barry, today's featured speaker, who began her tenure as CEO of Best Buy in 2019. Now, I think if you're like me, we think of Best Buy as a hometown company, but sometimes that makes it that we forget that Best Buy employs over 85,000 people in North America and does $43 billion in sales. So it's an amazing organization led by an amazing person, and so we're so happy that she's here today. Since joining Best Buy in 1999, Corie served in other executive roles, including CFO, Chief Strategic Growth Officer. She's played a critical role in overseeing strategic transformation and growth, issues related to digital technology, global finance, investor relations, enterprise risk and compliance, integration management, and Best Buy Health. Before joining Best Buy, Corie started her career as auditor at Deloitte & Touche. She's a Minnesota native. She holds a bachelor's degrees in accounting and management from the College of St. Benedict, where she now serves on the board of trustees, and she also serves on the board of directors at Domino's Pizza. Today, Corie will be in conversation with Chris Farrell, Senior Economics Contributor at Marketplace, American Public Media's nationally syndicated public radio business and economic program. Chris is also Senior Economics Contributor for Minnesota Public Radio, frequently appearing on NPR News as a contributor and guest host. He's also the author of 5 books on personal finance and the economy, so we're pleased to have Chris with us today. Please join me in welcoming Chris and Corie to the stage.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a lot of questions to ask you.
I know, but can we start this? So I have to be honest with all of you. We got on the prep call and we had like our little Zoom thing together, and I was totally fangirling. Because every day on the way home, I listen to Marketplace and Kai Ryssdal, and that's where I get my news. And so all of a sudden, I mean, someone that I respect deeply was sitting across on the Zoom with me, and then I just got more nervous. So here we all are.
Well, I'll see if I can make you even more nervous.
Great, let's make that your goal for sure.
That's right, for sure. Well, thank you very much. And I also want to say to you in the audience, write down your questions, because we're going to get to your questions. So write them down, grab somebody's attention, and they'll bring them up to me later on, and we'll get to your questions. But I want to start off with, given the news, I want to talk about tariffs.
That'd be great.
And we actually don't know what's going on with tariffs. I mean, there was tariffs with Mexico and Canada, and now they're delayed for a month. China, the 10%, that seems to have gone into effect. So with all the uncertainty, how do you navigate tariffs?
With an amazing team, many of which is in this room. And if I take a step back, tariffs is emblematic of an environment that is changing more rapidly than it ever has in the history of the world, right? So tariffs is one thing, but think about what teams have navigated. You all have navigated over the last 5 years. Everything from a pandemic to massive global destabilization to massive economic changes. And so with tariffs, we use the same approach we have throughout much of the change that we've seen. Tariffs specifically for us, just to give a little bit of background, what we're trying to do is support the administration's goals, right? So you're trying to understand, like, what are we really trying to accomplish here? But also to educate on what that means for the American consumer. The supply chains for consumer electronics are incredibly complex. They are very technical, they are very hard to move, and many of them run through China and actually Mexico. And so this is not an overnight question. Now, also, we are the importer of record on only 2% of what we sell, meaning our vendors are the ones who are actually making a lot of the manufacturing decisions. We're the ones who are actually bringing that product in partnership with them. So this is a real symbiotic relationship between us and our vendor partners, and I can see some of our team here who work day in and day out with our vendor partners. Trust me, everybody agrees that diversification of supply chains is a very good thing. I think COVID taught us all, you don't want to be heavily reliant on one part of the world as it relates to supply chains, but it takes time to move those supply chains. And so tariffs being one tool to kind of push on a myriad of different issues, but one of which is just diversification. We've definitely seen our vendor partners moving and changing the way that they produce, but when tariffs are put into place this fast, you literally can't react overnight. And so we'll work with vendor partners, but at the end of the day, these really do become costs that get passed on to the American consumer because they flow through that entire supply chain and they become part of the baseline cost. So our goal is to always be there to help educate the administration and just talk about what we see as knock-on effects of this. But I have to tell you, our teams do amazing work in partnership with our vendors to help make sure as little of that disrupts the consumer as possible.
Yeah, so what are you hearing from the vendors? I mean, what are the questions that they're asking Best Buy?
Yeah, one of the major strengths in our model that I think is discounted, we're the only CE retailer left in the US.
I was just going to say, there were a lot 30 years ago.
Even
20,
15 years ago. We're it. We play a very unique role in the ecosystem. Think about it. Where else can you go and have a team of people, whether that's a digital experience or a physical one, that all they do is try to help consumers pick and choose and optimize the electronics that work for them? We're it. So for our vendors, we're like kind of the one-stop shop, the largest market share player in consumer electronics. So you can bet the phone rings pretty fast as tariffs are getting put into place from our vendor partners, who first of all are saying, Team Corie, here's what we are trying to do as fast as we can. How can we help you bring these products to market in the most seamless way possible so the consumer doesn't feel all of that pain? And so it's a constant back and forth. What they're trying to do, and they have been trying to do, you can see it in lots of different examples. Apple has actively talked about, as an example, diversifying some of their supply chains into India. They also haven't done it overnight because it's really, really complex. And so many are working this problem alongside of us, and at the same time, they're looking to us to help tell the story about why this isn't an easy problem to solve.
And I read one Wall Street analyst report that says that re-estimates that 90% of the goods sold by Best Buy are imported products. Is that in the right range?
Broadly, across all the countries, yes. And we've said it publicly, about 60% of our cost of sales flows through China in some way, shape, or form, and that's actually been pretty consistent even with everything that's happened over the last 5 years. And then actually a lot of the diversification has happened in places like Mexico and Vietnam. And so these aren't supply chains that are easy to build here. And in fact, many companies that have tried to build supply chains here in the US have not been successful because they're so complex, because of the quantities of labor and technical expertise that you need. They're just really, really difficult to create here.
So now I want to take a little bit of a step back, looking at 2025. Going into 2025, you have an economy that's healthy, continuing to grow, 4.2% unemployment rate, in historic 49 months of job growth. So when you're looking at 2025 and you're making your strategic plan, how does this year look to Best Buy?
I'd love to ask you this question. I love the backdrop that you gave, because for all of the conversation there is about a consumer who's looking for value and is stretched, and those things are true, broadly, the consumer is in a very good place. Now, that looks very different across the income spectrum, where you're seeing lower income struggling a lot more. We can see it in credit delinquencies, we can see it in the amount of debt that's being taken on, and then higher income quartiles really performing well, because there's just a lot of wealth that's been created in some of those higher income quartiles. So what we're trying to figure out is, what is right for the consumer against that backdrop? It's just that simple. And it's not like there's some magical, I love AI, it's not like there's some magical like AI box that I can plug all this into and they're like, ooh, you should do this assortment. It is, how do you have everything from a great value that is available at an opening price point for someone who might have a really tight budget, all the way to, how do we show you what's possible, right? A 100-inch TV that will look beautiful on all of your walls, I promise, and is now the cutting edge of technology, or what's coming next. And the greatest job the team does is try to navigate through all of that and decide strategically, how do we at various points in time reach the widest swath of customers that we can? So when it's a value time, like President's Day or like the holidays, you have one posture. When it's kind of day in, day out, what are the electronics I just need to live my life? You might have a different posture, and you need to make sure all of that works seamlessly for the consumer across all of that. So the backdrop is actually a pretty strong one, but the devil is in the details. We always laugh, retail is detail, because it is. Because it's every single consumer has their own story, and the question is, how can you be there at that moment for them, whatever their story is?
So, I keep reading that, the consumer habits have changed. But when you're talking about the detail, have consumer habits changed? Or maybe another way of putting it is, where in the details of consumer habits are you saying we have to pay attention to this?
Consumer habits have absolutely changed. By the way, they always change. Now, I think the pace of change has been quite different. Just think about what the pandemic did. I always laugh and tell the story, like the day that my dad started getting his groceries curbside, I knew people's shopping behaviors had changed. And we all have our own story of that, right? And a bunch of things happened. One, consumers became much less brand loyal, right? Remember the day where you were like, I just need a computer and I don't really care who's selling it. So less brand loyal. Two, consumers got much better at navigating digital solutions when they wanted to. So it became like, I have no problem getting curbside, I have no problem using a locker, all of that's easy. And then three, consumers got very used to ubiquitously getting whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. And so it's not, sometimes people overly simplify and they say, well, the consumers become more digital. It's not that simple. The consumer has gotten used to getting whatever they want completely seamlessly and being recognized and known. So even, you can think about your own shopping behaviors. One day I might need a cord instantly and I'm gonna have it delivered to my home within an hour. The next day I might go into a store to actually go look at a fulsome home entertainment experience because I wanna go see it, understand it, and then maybe have someone come to my home and help me install it. I'm the same consumer. But my behaviors in each of those moments is incredibly different. And so our job is to stitch the thread line through all of those and make sure that based on these now what I would consider much higher consumer expectations, we're moving fast enough to meet those higher expectations.
And speaking of those higher expectations, so how are you looking at artificial intelligence, AI? You cannot escape it. It seems to be everywhere, right? But when the consumer comes in and says, hey, I've been hearing about these AI computers, these AI smartphones, what's this all about? Is this an exciting moment for you? Is AI going to change sales at the Best Buy?
I saw at least 4 of you roll your eyes when he said AI, so, and that's real.
But I have more questions, so more eye rolling.
I'm so excited. But but that's real, because sometimes what happens in technology is that the future promise and the articulation of the future promise outstrips the current reality. It's happened lots of times in our history, by the way. Like, there have been lots of moments where we talk about cool upcoming technology and everyone's like, okay, so when does the magic happen? But let's do a quick poll here in the room. How many of you have used some kind of generative AI tool, like ChatGPT or something of that? Okay,
There.
so we
So
can...
it was just, since this is going to be on the radio, that's like 100%.
Oh yeah, that's right, we're on the radio. So the truth is, there's a little bit of snarkiness around, is it really gonna change the world? And yet many of us have started to adopt it. Even the way you learn. My son is at college, not here, sorry. And he actually, his teachers now are saying, it's fine if you start with your first draft from ChatGPT. I just need to know you know how to personalize it from there. I was like, whoa. That's a completely different way of learning. And so yes, consumers are interested, but they can't quite figure out, like, is this really gonna change the world or not? And so these moments for Best Buy are actually where we shine the most. I had a board member once ask me this lovely question when we were in a board meeting, and he said, Corie, how do you want people to feel about your brand? It's a very different way to think about your brand. How do you want people to feel? And I had a very bad answer in the moment, but I doubled back with a good one. And that was, I was in a store and I was walking past a customer who was sitting at one of our end caps, and they were playing with a new computer, and I heard the magical words. And those words are, I had no idea I could do that. Or I had no idea it could do that. Or I had no idea this could change my life this way. And moments like this, where technology innovates and changes, these are the moments where we shine the most. We're most important to our vendor partners. We have the chance to explain the most to our customers. We can bring these things to life in ways that others can't. These are moments we're excited for, not because they're gonna change the world overnight. I always tell people, I never expected people to be lined up just waiting for a Copilot Plus computer. But slowly over time, they change the way that we do things. The truth is, on day one, the most compelling factor on the new Copilot Plus computers is that their battery life goes from like 3 hours to 22 to 24 hours. That in and of itself is a really good use case for me. I don't even need it yet to have features like look back, where I can find all my history or understand all my behaviors. And the cool part about AI, and then I'll be done, is that it will continue to just get better and have better use cases over time. You don't need to have it change the world today. You need it to slowly innovate and change the way we do things, and that's where our blue shirts absolutely shine, and their ability to bring this to life for you as a person, depending on what matters to you.
So how does this affect the training, the investment in your workers? Because I walk into a Best Buy and I say, hey, I've heard about this thing, Copilot. Can I use it with this computer, or am I over here? I mean, and I'd like an answer, right, from employees.
This is why, the 85,000 plus people work at Best Buy. This is our jam. We love this stuff. And the cool part about training for us is often it is not so much about what can we help you learn about the product, though we do that. It's often our employees going out and discovering as much as they humanly can about what they're selling. But in this case, we partnered closely, let's take Copilot Plus, very closely with Microsoft, who again leans in with us in this moment because they don't have stores. They only have one chance to really tell this story, and them helping us create content. And then content has changed, right? These are now 10-minute videos. They're not like 3 hours where you sit at your computer and you go through your e-learning. It's 10-minute snapshots and videos that help them understand what's most relevant. But here's actually, I think, whether or not it relates to AI specifically, I think the way training has changed for us. It used to be about, give me all the technical specifications. Do any of you care if I explain to you the chipset that is inherent in a Copilot Plus PC? No. You want to know, well, that guy does, but the rest of you want to know exactly how it will change the way that you work. And so our teams, it's not just about go be the smartest technical person in the room. They have to take what they know and make it matter to you. That's actually a very different skill set. So it's much less about the technical training, and it's a lot more about really what are the features here that might matter, and how do you get to know someone well enough so that you can bring those features to life. By the way, we do that on our website too. And that's where we're using AI in a different way.
So, okay, so, and by the way, I was thinking when you were mentioning about your son, one thing that I like about the way he's being taught is that when he graduates and gets a job, he's very comfortable with AI. So, right away with an employer. So
That was their point. This is actually
wonderful.
how, when you go out into the world, you will do work. And that's why the basis by which they do that. I don't know, I have my own feelings about it, but whatever.
Okay.
Different day.
But what about AI at work? The stuff that, I walk into your store and I see all the technology, but is AI affecting the stuff that I don't see, your competitive advantage, where you're putting your investments into?
Immensely. And there's really 4 buckets that we think about at Best Buy. There's the proactive way that you use your inherent data to create differentiated customer experiences. There's the effectiveness and efficiency, which you're hearing a lot about, like how can I help my call center agents be much more effective and efficient and human when they need to be. There is just the risk profile of AI. How do I as an organization really work on keeping my data safe and all the risk associated? And then there is, back to my example about my son, there is encouraging our employees to actually go use the stuff. I don't know how many people, like when generative AI first came out, there were a bunch of companies who said we're locking it down and no one's ever going to use ChatGPT. And we went the other way and said, you need to go use it. Now you need to do it smartly. Please don't go download our strategic plan and let everyone share it. But you do need to go out there and start to use all the different models. Every time a new model comes out, I'm out there using it, trying to figure out how it works. To your first point, on our app specifically, every single person, when you open up our Best Buy app, will have a homepage that is personalized to you. Every person here, it will look different. Think about what an app used to be. Like every single person who opened the app had the exact same sale that was pinned to the top of their app, and that was it. The Best Buy app now has a multitude of large language models running behind it, and those models are taking all of your behaviors and then trying to personalize a homepage for you. Right? It might be that you have a bunch of services experiences with us right now, and that's what's going to pin first. Or it might be that we know, based on your shopping patterns, you're looking for X, Y, or Z, and it's going to be that. And those places where we have interesting data, or overnight, literally almost overnight, I give our teams a ton of credit, for the holiday season, we created a gifting agent. You can go out and try to find the right gift, because I'm a stickler about being that best gift giver, and you can just start asking those very human questions, and it's going to start to narrow down, here's the gift that will be right for you. These are real-time examples. And again, I think sometimes people roll their eyes like, is it really going to change? Yes, it will change over time, an amazing amount of facets. The question is, how do you prioritize what is most important to your business? And then the last thing that I would say is I also make it a point to make sure AI is not a strategy. I have a strategy. I have a business strategy. The question is, where can you best use technology to help you advance your business strategy at a pace that looks and feels incredibly different than anything else we've seen?
So prioritize your strategy with AI. I mean, where is that focus?
Think about something like search. You get very used to going out to ChatGPT and asking very human questions. Like my last one is, what's the best pair of headphones for someone who sweats extremely heavily on the treadmill? Too much information, but true. And then ChatGPT does its thing, and it starts to come back with, well, here's some things you might want to consider, and here, you get trained as a consumer to start to ask human questions. So think about what that means for how we as companies think about digital search. It's going to be, in a very short period of time, people won't come to my search bar and type in PC Windows. They're going to type in, what is the best computer for a freshman in college who tends to wreck his things really often? And then it needs to answer in that human way. So my strategy is I need an omni-channel experience that delivers, as we talked about earlier, these really seamless customer touch points. One of the ways I'm going to bring that strategy to life is by having a much more human search that delivers on that customer expectation for know me and help me in ways that are unique to Best Buy. And by the way, that's where I can use my proprietary data. I know more about how people search for and use consumer electronics than anyone else in the world, which means in theory, if I do this right, my search should be smarter and more helpful than anyone else's. And then that becomes your competitive advantage, your moat, and the way that you maintain and gain share.
So it was interesting in your November earnings call.
Did you listen?
Yeah, I read it.
Oh.
Read the transcript. You know, here we're talking about technology and search and AI, but one of the things you highlighted was a new store in Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah.
So how do stores fit into the strategy?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to my Bozeman store on Thursday. Don't tell them, they don't know. Back to the conversation we were having about our strength is in being a true multi-channel retailer. And if you need proof, just think about how many people went back to shopping in stores when the pandemic was done. Like if all we wanted were digital experiences, trust me, we had the ultimate chance. We all could have just stayed shopping digitally forever. That's not right for every occasion in your life. And so our stores are this crucial experiential touch point that is differentiated from anybody else's store on the planet. Again, only consumer electronics, only the coolest, most innovative new stuff. But the ubiquity of stores, I think in the future for almost every retailer will look quite different. Meaning, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, basically store growth was, I'm gonna take this format of store and I'm just gonna go put it in every single community and it's all gonna look the same and everyone's gonna be happy. Now, we find different stores index into different experiences. Some of my urban stores are highly in-store pickup and curbside stores. Like we'll have upwards of 70, 80% of the business in that store is people who just quickly want to get their product curbside or they quickly want to do it in-store pickup. Okay, so how different does that selling floor and that warehouse need to look versus if you're here in town and you head into Richfield or the newest store we just opened up in Burnsville, we just opened up a brand new store in Burnsville, that's an experiential store. I want to see everything that you could offer. I want to touch it, I want to feel it, I want to play with it, because demographically, when we look at our behaviors, that's a place where people want to have that more immersive experience. So now the team has a harder job, which is how do you create a market-based approach that, depending on what you see in that market, has all the solutions. So here in Minneapolis, we have outlets, so you can go get refurbished product or maybe slightly damaged product at a great price. We have small format stores, which is, we'll get to Bozeman in a second. And then we have the large format experiential stores. And then we have the ability to go to anyone's home who would like a consultation, or you can always experience us digitally and do in-store pickup or lockers. That has to work in this market. And for anyone who's lived here a long time, we've redone our store footprint here pretty materially to address this market. Bozeman is a new example, which is now that I have a small format store, every store for us used to be on average 33,000 square feet. Our Bozeman store is 15,000 square feet. It's a market we would never get into because the operating model would be too expensive. But now I can have this great smaller footprint store that can deliver digital and physical experiences to a market I never otherwise could have touched. And by the way, the last thing that people forget about, stores matter to communities. Retail matters to communities. I could do another poll on how many people here started their careers, their lives, somehow in retail. I am really good at checking groceries, and I would race any of you. And that was my important place that I played in the community. And when we open these stores, mayors come, city councils come, parents of the kids who work there come. These are really important, in some cases, cornerstones of communities. It's why our general managers of our stores, our average turnover right now of our general managers in our stores is less than 10%. They stay because they care. They care about their teams and they care about their communities. And so I think sometimes this becomes either it's digital or it's stores. It is so much more complex than that. And it is this ecosystem that is so lovely between our employees, our customers, and in our case, our vendors, and the unique way we bring things to life.
So I mean, how does a company like Best Buy compete against like an Amazon? Because, again, online, but then you have the multi-channels. So how do you compete against Amazon?
I mean, we have the luxury of competing against some of the biggest retailers in the world, right? Think about Amazon or Walmart or Target or Home Depot or Lowe's, or, I mean, you can't make it a zero-sum game with one competitor, or you're gonna solve the wrong problem. You're just gonna try to outdo one competitor, And that is very, very short-sighted. I think the better question for me is, what is our unique role on this planet? What are we here to do that no one else is here to do? And if you stay maniacally focused on that question, then I think you end up investing in the differentiators in the model, right? So yes, the basics have to be true. Do I have to be priced right? Absolutely. Do I have to deliver fast? Absolutely. But if you order from Amazon, can you go into the store if you're having some trouble with your computer and have it troubleshooted? Troubleshooted? That was bad, troubleshot. You can't. Or even if you go to more of a mass retailer, can someone there give me a deep drink into why ChatGPT is different or what headphones would be best for a heavy sweater? No, you can't. And so instead, us and the team is so good about this, staying so clear about why we're here and not getting trapped up and, ooh, Amazon did that, we better go do it too. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we don't need to every day deliver the fastest possible. Maybe instead, we need to let you choose your delivery window so your iPad's not just sitting on your front stoop waiting for you to get home. What if that was more valuable? If you just solve for one problem, you're not actually thinking about what the consumer needs. And in our case, the team has done a beautiful job staying maniacally focused on our role on this planet.
So one of the things I'm always interested in is how do large established companies, you have more than 85,000 employees, innovate, change? Because we've seen it over and over again as companies get larger, it gets harder to change things, harder to innovate, which is why a lot of times good employees leave and they'll start up with their own idea because they just want to do it. So, and yet Best Buy has changed a lot over the years.
This one's always interesting to me because it's this weird juxtaposition. I talk a lot about paradox because I think many of us are living with more paradox in our lives than ever. Like the team will come to me and they'll say, well, are we going to invest in the customer or the employee? And I'm like, yes. And they hate it. And they get really mad. But this is a bit of a paradoxical question because there's this question as a retailer, how do you embrace your history, your culture, everything that makes you amazing? And at the same time, how do you make sure you don't love it so much that you can't push forward into the new? And that balance, because if you go too strong on either side, if you say, oh, this is the way we've always done it and our culture is so strong, we need to keep doing it, you'll have one problem. At the same time, if you say, nope, none of that matters, we're a new company now, you're gonna have a different problem. And so what we really work hard on at Best Buy is creating a culture where innovation and change is embraced. That can sound like just pandering words. If you really mean it, you have to reward failure and things that don't go the way you want. You have to.
And that's hard to do.
It's really hard to do because it can often be on big stages, but you have to do it. You have to augment amazing tenure at our great company with new people who bring completely different perspectives and life history. Like every move you make has to be geared at, not how do I make this company innovative? That's not gonna work. Like I can't just tell everyone, please go be innovative. Instead, it's how do I create the systems, the culture, the processes that nurture innovation at the company? That's actually a much harder question to answer. If it was as easy as all of us just like standing up and saying, we're gonna innovate now, we'd all do it. It's much harder to think strategically through, how do I keep pushing on what's important for this company? How do I not get complacent? Not too hard in retail, but still. And how do I make sure I set up the systems and processes that will actually embrace innovative ideas, not just the most successful thing in the moment?
So as a good example, I was reading about the third-party marketplace that you're embracing. Tell us about this and how did this come about?
This one's such an interesting example because ahead of our time, I would argue, in the mid-2010 range, we had a marketplace. And that marketplace proliferated. But it actually, at that time, was really unique, and it was causing problems with our first-party experiences versus our third-party experiences. And so we closed it down. And that's one of those examples where it'd be really easy for, how many times do you think someone at the table said, we already did this? Like 10 years ago, yes, but the world is different. And what we started to see in consumer electronics is Not for every product, but for some. Think about phone cases for a second. People want a huge assortment of potential options, right? But I can't, as a retailer, afford to stock and inventory every single phone case on the planet. There's no financial way that that makes sense, especially in an evolving store footprint like we talked about. Okay, so now that the customer has been trained to expect very deep options, how do I deliver against that expectation? And what we just started to see is much more of the consumer behaviors buying in a marketplace than we had ever seen historically. And most of you probably most of the time, you don't even know if it's a marketplace or if it's first party. I mean, most of the time when you're shopping on Amazon, unless it's because it takes like 5 days to get there versus 1, it's like one of the only ways you can tell if it's first party or third party. And as we saw a customer getting more and more used to shopping this way, you have to admit, oh, that's where the customer is going. Okay, if that's where the customer is going, then how do we create Best Buy's marketplace? Not just, how do I just go launch a marketplace? Because again, then you're gonna sub-optimize your brand. The question is, what does marketplace look like to us? And then what are all the implications of that? Does it change the way you show up in your stores? Does it mean only certain vendors might be in one place or another? Does it change your service offering? Does it change your warranty offerings? If I return it, where does it go? What are the logistics of that? How much more labor do I need? Like end to end now, running this in a way that stays true to our brand, but addresses what we were seeing as a competitive gap in the way that customers are shopping. And so yes, this is exactly an example. And in this case, we made the decision, we codified it, and now we have real processes that are helping us bring it to life in a way that stays very true to the brand. And so this is an example of, it wasn't just, I woke up one day and said, I think a marketplace would be fun. It is instead really thinking deeply about how your strategy evolves over time and then creating the processes that push that forward.
So now I want to make a big pivot.
Yeah, let's pivot.
Okay, we're on a college campus.
We are.
People are going to be graduating. They're getting their degrees. What do you advise people? I mean, everyone knows what a job is, but this career thing is a different. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't imagine when you were 10 years old, you said, I want to be in retail.
No, when I was 10 years old, I was going to be a ballerina. Yes. And I was going to be amazing.
I was going to be a Canadian Mountie.
Even though
I'm not Canadian.
Oh, I feel like we should make this dream come to life for you. I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to feel like we're going to have it all figured out. That's true at graduation. It's true when you're 37. It's true when you're 54. Graduation is a seminal moment, but for so many of us, how many of you have had a boss or someone look at you and say, all right, so where do you want your career to take you? What's your objective here? And I would always be like, I don't know I have no idea. But what I did know is what drove me. And instead of focusing on the title or the job, or even here's exactly what my career path is gonna be, I spent a lot of time trying to think about what drove me. And I still do to this day. I started it when I was a financial analyst. I keep 2 Post-it notes, because 3M's a Minnesota company, 2 Post-it notes. And on those days when I go home and it's been that day, right? It's that day you get in your car and you turn up the music loud and the sunroof is open and you're like, I rocked that day. And on those days, I write down what happened. Why? Why do I feel that way? What fed me that day? And on the days where I fail abjectly, and there have been many, where I'm embarrassed or I'm sad or I wish I wouldn't have said that thing in that meeting or that thing on that podcast, I write down what made that day that way. And over time, those lists for me have turned into what really feeds my soul as it relates to work. That for me isn't a career question per se. No. It's really thinking about, is the work that I'm doing filling my soul? And if it's not, what might be the next work that might fill my soul? Because careers they're not static. Think about the jobs that were available to me in the 90s when that's why I was a CPA. I was at that point, I was I need a good paycheck and a steady job, and I'm pretty good at this. And that's where I started. But over time, for me, it became much more about how do I fill that soul? Because the truth is, I'm only renting this title. We all only rent our titles. The question is, who's the person you want to be? And how can your work intertwine with and help grow the person you want to be? And that, for me, is what's always fed. And I wish I would have maybe known that or thought about that a little bit sooner.
And so are the questions up here?
I hope these are really hard ones.
Exactly. So while they bring the questions, I do want to ask you, is there something that in your career a mentor said to you that has stuck with you, that when you're in those, what do we do next, you recall what this person advised you?
Yeah, I remember Ann Lowry is the woman that I came to Best Buy to work for. I didn't come to Best Buy to work at Best Buy. I love the company. I interviewed with Ann, and Ann was amazing, and I thought, this is a leader I can learn from. And I remember at one point, like, I was slogging through some job, and we sat across from each other, and she looked at me and she said, Corie, you need to make this look a little easier. And I was like, okay. And at first, like many times when we get feedback, for as much as we all say we like feedback, we might be inclined to argue with said feedback. I was like, what are you talking about? But as we talked more, what I realized is her point was like, you're wearing your stress on your shoulders, and I almost felt like I had to. Like, I need to make it look like I'm working hard and being busy and doing all the things, and this is stressful. And she was like, the more you do that, the more you breed it in all the people around you, and the more your soul, your body starts to believe it. And instead, like, find that balance, that place. Figure out, how do you ask for help? How do you continue your learning journey? How do you figure out those moments where it's maybe not all clicking for you? And it started with just like such an offhanded comment on the, like, just, you need to make it look a little easier. But all the things that sat under that were like, oh my gosh, if it really is that hard, you need to find an ecosystem that will help you do this. And that has always sat with me on those days when I'm like, ooh, I bet the whole team knows I'm really stressed out today. I do that on purpose some days, to be fair, but on most days I'm like, no, they don't need to know that, so I need to figure out what I need to fix about me that's gonna help me be successful and balanced today.
So I'm dating myself. Here's my Phil Donahue moment.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
What's something we wouldn't know about you right away that has helped you lead?
I am passionate about girls and women in sports. And so my collegiate sport was rugby. And rugby, for those who've ever watched it or played it, it is the ultimate team sport. It never stops. The ball is almost never dead. It requires many, many different physiques and skill sets and stamina and camaraderie, and the teams all respect each other at the end. And I think the learnings that I took from this amazing, in my case, group of women that surrounded me and played this sport with me, I have taken with me. And I also played volleyball, and I also ran, and these are all the things that, for me, you can take everything it takes to do those things, whether it's the dedication to practice or your willingness to work with someone else's skill sets and talents that might be different. I always laugh and say, like, work is really just one big group project, right? And there's always like one person who didn't do their homework and one person who was out too late and someone else like isn't pulling their weight. And sport for me it always helps me work through what I consider kind of this like big long group project we all call work.
So how is Best Buy leveraging customer insights to continuously innovate and elevate the multi-channel customer experience? Was
that from our team? Some of our customer insights team is here. I would call it the lifeblood of what we do. We have literal whole meetings that just talk about what are we learning about our customers. April Wagner is somewhere in the room here, and she and her team helping us look around the corners of what are these new customer behaviors that we're starting to see, and then what are the implications. Sometimes customer insights gets boiled down to here's a page of data about your customers and what they're doing. And one of the most beautiful things that they've done is evolve that into what are the implications for Best Buy. And that for me is the biggest question. We were talking earlier about how do you think about innovation? I think one of the most important attributes of any company right now is resilience. You asked me about tariffs. You asked me about the pandemic. I can't predict what's going to happen in the world. What I can do is try to foster the most resilient organization possible. Because then what happens matters less. How we work through it matters more. And so this idea of customer data is this direct feeder into you are as resilient as possible the more you challenge your conventional ways of working and embrace what the customer is begging you to listen to and begging to tell you. And I think these are the muscles that help you with your resiliency, which isn't a function of the CEO, not of the leadership team. It's literally a function of an organization working together to overcome anything that comes its way.
So follow up, I mean, what did you learn about resiliency in Best Buy during the pandemic? I mean, now it's still close, but we can look back and what were the lessons learned?
Isn't it wackadoo that it was 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And we all like sat in our houses and stared at each other and thought, what do we do? I have spent a lot of time on this, and it's not just, I say in air quotes, COVID. For us, it's been like really a 5-year path to normalization of our business model. Like 2 years of huge swings up, 2 years of huge swings down, all kinds of global chaos in between. And there's 5 things that I've really narrowed it down to. One is, in a time of crisis, your purpose and your values shine more than ever. And you have to let them shine more than ever. Our purpose is to enrich lives through technology, and it never came more true than it did in COVID. Like, our teams wanted to work because they believed so much in what we were trying to deliver. And that was such an eye-opener for me. The second thing is, do everything that is kind of the antithesis of what you would expect from a CEO. Ask for help, admit when you're wrong, tell the world you were wrong, always have a learning mentality, be superhuman, meaning not superhuman, but be very human and approachable. Just do all the things that were kind of unexpected. I think that really changed the way I certainly thought about leading. The third for me is what I talked about earlier, embracing paradox. If you all remember, it was a time of extreme fear for some people. And yet at the same time, I had teams who wanted to go help their communities. Even I was just in Asheville, North Carolina, which flooded 3 of our stores. That next morning, those stores were open and doing curbside pickup. Not because we told them to, we told them to shut down. They did it because their communities needed them. And the more you kind of embrace the paradox of everyone is scared and nervous and at the same time can really be fulfilled by the purpose you're here to serve, that is something that we really embraced. The fourth is what I like to call multimodal thinking, which is in the pandemic, you got in trouble if all you paid attention to was like what was right in front of you. You had to think about what are we doing today, but how do we continue to set ourselves up to be vibrant 4 years from now? Because we are gonna get through this. It hurts teams to try to think in a multimodal way sometimes. Yeah. All you want to do is like optimize earnings, right? You're gonna shoot yourself in the foot if that's all you're thinking about. And so 1 hour of meeting might be about optimizing earnings. The next hour of meeting might be about optimizing our performance 5 years from now because we believe this is the cornerstone of our strategy. I think these are like bigger systemic, how do you think about an organization? The last one that I would give you is, I remember deeply in the pandemic, people saying, when are things gonna return to normal? Like, who remembers some of the, like, when are things gonna be normal? And I don't think that we ever return to normal anymore. And I mean that just in the broadest sense. There isn't a return to normal. Instead, the question is, how can we bring as much stability to our teams as possible against a very volatile world that we all work in? And in the pandemic, we had 3 general rules we tried to live by. They were super basic, but they gave this like stable guiding North Star. So instead of craving normalcy, how do you kind of bring some aspects of stability so the team can always march forward versus getting entrenched and scared?
And also it seems you have to be constantly learning.
Constantly learning is, it's so funny. My kids are like, oh, I can't wait till I graduate. Then I can stop with all this homework. I'm like, dude, you have, every day I wake up and wish I knew more, if that makes sense. I set aside full blocks in my calendar to just go out and try to digest information. Every morning I start my day with 5 news sources that I go listen to. On the way home, I'm not joking, it's NPR and Marketplace and different ways that I can just consistently get information in. Because, you can wake up any given day and literally the economic backdrop right now might be completely different than it was the day before. And there's no way I can know enough to know exactly how to try to steel ourselves for that. I love learning though too, so.
Yeah, it's fun. So let's see. What qualities do you value in your peers and employees that contribute to success?
I value their superpowers. So sometimes I think people want me to say, like, here's the 3 things you need to be successful. They'll tell you, Cammie's sitting over there, when we have our year-end discussions, it can be habit to say, like, here's what you did right and here's what you did wrong, and then you kind of move along. Every time I sit down with my team, I talk to them about their superpowers. Here's the 5 things that I saw you exhibit in the last year that I think can move mountains. I would like to see more of those. And then I say, and here's 5 places I need your help explicitly, right? But each of those superpowers in my team, I believe if I'm doing this right, all 7 of them have very different superpowers. There aren't 3 things they all have that are the same. They actually are all quite different and bring the most well-rounded approach to problem solving possible. Because I don't need 7 people who all agree and think like me. We're gonna be in big trouble. I need 7 people who are wildly different with differing perspectives, points of view, backgrounds, life experiences, who can help me navigate problems that no other management team before us has had to navigate.
What steps do you take to protect customer data?
Oh, wow. We are running the gamut. It is our most important asset, period. And it is a space where we have grown an immense amount of capability at Best Buy. Because what's interesting is it's not just what do we do to protect data, it is also now a patchwork of state and national regulations in terms of how you protect data. And so we both have to keep one eye toward what are we required to do, which can be very different depending on the state, and what do we believe is the moral imperative. Also, though, against a backdrop where data is an incredibly important currency in how we personalize experiences. And so I don't want everyone so afraid of using data that you suboptimize your ability to bring these unique experiences to life. And, this is the paradox, I cannot risk that data in any way, shape, or form harming a customer experience. And so our teams now are all built around, and our protection measures are all built around trying to take that patchwork of sometimes competing needs and always prioritizing that the most important piece is that the customer needs to feel as in control of their data as possible. And therefore, everything that we do needs to be wired to ensure they are both able to dictate their data and we have all the right protections in place to keep it as safe as humanly possible.
Okay, so we're continuing to bounce around.
Okay.
Okay, what's your vision for Best Buy Health? And I'll ask you, what is Best Buy Health? In the next 5 years, how will you contribute to shaping how preventative and responsive healthcare is provided?
So Best Buy Health is an area of the company that we specifically have tasked with helping us proactively change healthcare based on technology. I get the chance to go to the Consumer Electronics Show, which is in Las Vegas and highlights all of the consumer electronics that are coming. And one of the fastest growing areas there is how consumer electronics are, in the best way possible, helping to shape healthcare. And it's everything from little devices like my Oura Ring that right now I'm sure I'm like redlining my blood pressure because I'm stressed out, all the way to now glucose monitoring that you can wear, or the little baby sock that you can put on your baby and it will attach to your app and it will tell you if your baby isn't breathing appropriately or if their heart rate goes right, unlike all of us who had to like army crawl in and make sure our babies were still breathing. The gamut of healthcare needs that will be disrupted positively by consumer electronics is amazing. So we have 3 arms to health, and I'll be brief. The first is just the consumer stuff. It's stuff like the Ring, it's stuff like connected scales, it's stuff like those glucose monitors, our heart rate monitors. There are more products. You can actually go to our website and we have a separate tab that is just health and wellness. And it's all the things that you can do to proactively work on your own health. Our second is called active aging. We have a brand called Lively, and that is active, fast response for an aging adult at home. So you can just press a quick button on a phone, or there's wearable devices, and you can get help. Sometimes that help is, I just want someone to talk to. And so we have specially trained caring centers, we call them, they're call centers. And those caring centers are just trained to both help people if there's a real medical emergency, but also help people if they need a lift or groceries or someone to talk to. And then the third is the most nascent, and this is really about care at home. And in this case, often now, if you go and you have a heart procedure done, your doctor will send you home with a package of consumer electronics devices that you need to be connected, that they will then read the data from to make sure you're healing appropriately. What we are doing, we're not in the healthcare business, we are in the technology business, but we are partnering with some of the world's largest healthcare systems to be the technology provider. So if a patient needs to go home and needs to be monitored, we'll go to their home, we'll connect their devices, we'll show them how to use it. We also bought a data platform, so it will take the data in, and then it will kick out the appropriate indications to the doctors who then can monitor you. Because let's be clear, healthcare is too expensive, there are not enough beds, there are not enough caregivers, and more people want to be at home in an aging population. 10,000 people turn 65 every day in this country. And so what we are trying to do is skate to, we believe, a future where, used well, technology can pull immense cost out and drive better patient outcomes. And we are the only ones who want to deal with the tech, not the healthcare side.
So speaking of technology, we're being given the electronic hook.
There's negative there, I went too long.
That's okay. This has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
What a
Me
great
too.
conversation.
Thank you. And thank you
so
all
much.
for being here.
And thank to everybody that is here.
Thank you.
Well, that was really fantastic. I know when I'm going home this evening, I'm going to say I was in a conversation with both of you. And so just the ability to learn a lot and be engaged with the discussion was just simply fantastic. So thank you both so much. As closing note, I'd like to welcome you all back here in April for First Tuesday, which will feature Tim Kofer, the CEO of Keurig Dr. Pepper. And having said that, let me wish you a wonderful day. And if you want to spend more time on the campus of the University of Minnesota, we will welcome you to do that also. So.